Okay, you'll have to deal with the first part and rely on. Sorry, I told you guys not to rely on this, right? To make sure that it was not your entire. So if you didn't take it up, you're relying on it. Email other people in the class and see if they would be nice to you. Sorry about that. Guys, remind me. I got my 201 classes trained now, right? Did you hit the record button? So at the beginning of the class, I say, hey, Mark, did you hit the record button? Right? Okay. Hopefully it's so memorable you don't need it. You know? Renaissance painters, and when they wrote about what they were doing, talked about the fact that what perspective did and what modeling and 3D rendering did was to create a window, the effect of a window. That the painting is a window onto an extension of our reality. And that brought the subject matter into our space, which of course were a devotional picture like the Virgin Mary and Christ. That's an important issue, right? They're truly there. Matisse, I think, is playing with that as a metaphor. That it's an open window. All paintings are open windows. They have been since the Renaissance. The painting has been a window. He takes the window as his theme. And when he does so, he then not only gives you an open window, but the style that he's using shuts it. Right? In other words, all paintings have been open windows. This one purports to be, but the way he applies the paint, the Fauvist style, not a term he chose, but a term he liked. The Fauve actually didn't like Fauve. They said there's nothing wild about it at all. But still, he adopted it. That ends up closing the window away, so that when you look at what's inside of the frame, it's not as if it's some sort of magical transportation. With Botticelli, you don't pay attention to the surface. With Botticelli, the surface seems to disappear. As you're looking through glasses there. But when you look at Matisse, you look at the surface. That's really all you get to see. And I think this is very deliberate on his part. Because one of the things that we'll see as we look at more works by Matisse, and we're going to focus mostly on him, we'll see some of this first, and then we'll focus on this, is that he's very aware of artistic traditions. And his paintings are often taking them and figuring out where his paintings are going to exist in relation to these great traditions of art by knowing them and addressing them directly. Right? So, he's changing things over a little bit, he's kind of shut it off at the same time. And I think that's for me, what makes this picture, from the National Gallery, one of the great photo pictures of the world. Now, you have quite a bit in your textbook that we could talk about, but I am going to focus entirely on the works that are at the National Gallery. Okay. Andre Derain, we saw before, was part of the original group of 6 in the room with the Donatello sculpture. We already saw that one picture he did from New York as well. After the show, his dealer sent him to London to make a series of Fauve-style paintings of London. And so that's what we're seeing here in this picture, Charing Cross Bridge in London. You can see the same basic style that we saw in the other Derain that we had before, where we have these, they almost look like mosaic tiles, don't they, of color. Look at the yellow sunlight reflecting on the water, lower right corner, or the blue reflections against the orange beneath those boats that look like wooden shoes. You know, they end up looking like tiles of color, right? Pieces of stained glass or something. In some places, even up above, upper left corner, the pink sky ends up, you get that tiling as well. That's typical for a lot of early Derain works. And so they've come out to London to do a bunch of these by his dealer. He's being represented, very prominent dealers that are back in the test you, so don't worry about it. But the dealer wants him to come back with brand new paintings in a brand new style of themes that have been pretty popular in Paris. just a few years before this, Monet had been sent by his dealer to also paint images of London. And so Durand's dealer is saying, hey, let's get some modern things. You know, by this time, Monet's been doing this stuff. I like Monet a lot, right? And I love these pictures. But Monet had been doing these already for 40 years or so, right? 1865, he sort of starts pushing in this direction. 1870, it breaks out. So these are 30 years old, right? It's kind of old hat, isn't it? 30 years old is the kind of movies I ask you if you've seen it, you guys always say no. So, sorry? I haven't done it, but you were here. So, just suffice to say, I stopped making fewer pop culture references because they only matter to me. What Durand dealer wants, obviously, is that these thematic choices of London-based scenes have some market value, and he wants Durand to begin doing that as well, to give us a much more modern idea of these scenes. And you can see, I think, by look at them compared to Monet, that Monet is interested in capturing that sort of heavy, wintry air at dusk, through which just a few lights, and even this doesn't get it, but those lights are sort of magenta colors, right? But how you can just barely make out the bridge through the London fog, right? Durand doesn't, it's not about a time of day, per se. It's not about a quality of light, but rather it's about the quality of paint. It's about the quality of color. And folds the whole thing, right? This really highlights how they're different from the Impressionists. Another Durand from the same period, again, these broad patches of color and this piling of smaller strokes of paint. Everything's based on what they saw. They are still setting their canvases up and painting what they see, but at the same time, the color choices are very much askew from that. Durand had a nice quote about this, writing about why he chose to make the colors so very different. He said the painting is too beautiful to be compared with the things we see. And if you think about it, right, painting is something that you should see on its own, right? The whole point of a painting is not just to say, oh, I want to go buy that horse, whatever that is. I want to go sit in front of the tree that you painted. The painting should stand up on its own, right? It should be beautiful and something to be looked at in its own right. And that's sort of what Durand is saying, is that, hey, you know, let's not compare it to what it's trying to illustrate, because I want you to look at its intrinsic beauty independent from representation. Right? And for many historians of 20th century, this is what makes the folk so very, very important, is that they are giving us all the tools we need to paint with total abstraction, right? To paint without representation. It's all right here. The things that they're saying, right? A painting shouldn't be compared to nature. A blue is not sky, a green is not grass, right? These statements from these artists tell us that painting is making an object. A two-dimensional object. Painting is not representing the things we see. And this is 1905. You know, this is really early on. Okay, I cut some stuff. Where am I? Great, I'm glad. Albert Marquet was part of the 1905 group as well. He's not working in the south of France with Durand and Matisse in the summer of 1905, but rather he goes to a different beach. He goes to the northern beaches of France, in Normandy. And I drew that France up on the board before. You remember, like, I should have maps up here, but I don't think I'm going to do it. This is basically France and Spain, right? So Durand and Matisse are down here in the Mediterranean. Club Med, right? Club Med food. And Paris is not there, right? Belgium and Holland are up here, and Germany's over here. This is where Marseille is, sort of in this region. And if you go through Paris, then kind of have little pitches like here, and then there's hey, it doesn't have to represent, right? If you have not a triangle, it's not a. So this is where Marseille is, the beach, and it's Norman, which you probably know from World War II, right? The beaches at Norman. Okay. So, and for people in Paris, this is a place that is hot, right? Easy day trip. Ocean City, you know, easy day trip from the metropolis, go hang out. That was really much more tourist friendly than the Mediterranean was at this point. You know, now the Mediterranean is totally tourist gear. But back then it was much more rustic fishing villages and whatnot. The Normandy or? Yeah. But the Trinity, but they could still get you there for the weekend, whereas in the turn of the century, right, even now the TGV, right, going at 120 miles an hour still takes you 6 hours to get to Nice in the south, right? But back then it would have been a couple days trip. We really had to work it, right? So as you can see here, what Marseille is doing is he's giving us all these beachside posters, kind of like Atlantic City or something like that, right? Where it's set up for that kind of a tourist venture. And this is the sort of place where painters had been making pictures for quite a while. Eugène Boudin actually spent time in Trouville and other beachside resort towns, and he just set up his easel. This is pre-impressionist. He set up his easel and made these paintings, and then sell them to the people as they were leaving, which is pretty cool, right? It's sort of, I used to do whitewater rafting, and there was at the big rapids, somebody would set up a camera and try to sell you pictures of you going down the river, right? Same idea. Boudin would paint these portraits of what the day was like that day and sell them to you wet if you wanted to buy them, right? As you're leaving, and many of the pictures still have sand stuck in the paint just because it was blowing around during the day, right? But what's different about it, so it's a traditional place that Marquez has picked up on here, but he's looking the other direction for something that's going to inspire a Fauvish interpretation of this, which is these bright patches of super saturated colors. Exactly what the Fauve movement is really all about. Raoul Dufy was also part of this original 1905 group, and you can see that while our artists have certain similarities that they share, they don't all look exactly the same. Now, granted, on a quiz, you would be forgiven for thinking that Dufy was a Matisse in this early phase. Certainly the treatment of that water. Notice something you can see in both of these that's a very Fauve thing to do is, and again, hits at all the things we've been talking about. Notice how objects get these outlines that make no sense. Look at the outline around the parasol in the Marseille on the left. See the one with the parasol, and then in the right corner there, she's walking with a man. And look at the shadow behind the parasol. Now, she's not close enough to that wall to cast the shadow, right? But what the artist has done is to offset the parasol by giving it this sort of halo effect of an alternative color, right? And if you look at Dufy, look at the oarsmen in the water, and look at the areas around it. It's almost like he's heavy-handedly outlined it first. Or the two pylons, what would you call those, in the water, right? There must be channel markers maybe, right? In the waters there, have that strange outlining that really paid no attention to visual reality. What was the red hat on the right? That has that great green circle around that red hat. That all it's there is for is for the composition, to make that green just jump, or that red just jump off the canvas, right? So, again, everything is applied with composition first and with illustration second, sometimes more so than sometimes less so. Right? All of these artists are also, however, choosing very, very traditional themes. Right? There's nothing new about going to San Andres. There's nothing new about going to Trouville. And there is, and the people that would have seen this in 1905 and beyond, they would have known that. That, hey, this is a scene I'm used to seeing, but I'm now seeing that scene painted in a very, very different way. Right? So, Duran, when he sent off to London, the whole point is to give us London in a new way. Matisse's open window to give us the painting of the window in a new way. Trudy, Saint-Adresse. Monet had painted Saint-Adresse. This is what it looks like to Monet. It's one of my favorite pictures. I have any favorite pictures, isn't it? I got too many, but I love this picture. He's focused on the sort of the workaday elements of it, because he's focused on the realist movement. But it's so nicely structured that you have a sense of how space works here, and a sense of a particular time of day in life. And for Dufy, more or less the same spot gives us an entirely different conception of it. So they're taking traditions, they're taking traditional themes, and they're giving us radical new versions, and that helps the newness of it become that much more strong. Monet does, doesn't it? When you get up close, you can see where the patches of color come from. Look at the lower right corner, right above his signature, and there that lichen or moss or seaweed that's growing there is really painted and splotched, and even our figures here, right, in blue, that's what I was talking about, right? The blue of that worker's coat, which is very common. Has that strong reverse L shape of blue to outline it, right? But for Monet, it's like he's doing that in order to capture the light that's falling on the side, to give it a certain sense of sculptural solidity, three-dimensionality. But if we look at her, or this, it's about an opportunity to add color. And you can see that these lines are not going to be just dashed in really quickly. In fact, this one here is made with about 3 or 4 different colors around the side of that. So roots are all here, right? But again, you're absolutely right in that representation for Monet is significantly more important at this point in the career. And for Dufy, that's taking a back seat to composition, right? And celebrating paint as paint. It's about the color. Another of our original foes is Maurice de Vlaminck. Again, part of that first faux exhibition, deeply indebted to Van Gogh, even admitted it. The interesting thing about Vlaminck is that he was self-taught, and in fact, his statements about art really do give some credence to those critics who said that it was primitive. He even said that's what he was aiming for, that he wanted his art to be ferocious. And I love that. Emotive, tender, ferocious, as natural as life itself. He may be the only wild beast amongst the foes, right? This way, at least insofar as his own temperament is concerned. And the composition here, again, owes some debt to others that we've seen, those mosaic tiles of color. But if we look at these two tugboats chugging their way up the Seine just outside of Paris, you'll notice that the colors are even more unnatural. Were tugboats painted like the French flag? I don't know enough about early 20th century history, but my guess is no. In fact, not at all. Vlaminck himself was a bit of an anarchist. He was kind of politically minded and very anti-government structure. So I'm curious to know whether or not this blue, white, and red on the tugboat might have something to do with his attitude towards the French government. Certainly, we see it playing over into the water as well, being nothing but a celebration of these, not celebration, an illustration of these French colors. Does it mean something to him? I don't really have an answer for that. Right. So it's becoming, I think, to a certain degree clear what Fauvism is as a movement. It's fairly easy to pick out the central themes that the Fauve artists are dealing with. We'll wind up with one last one, another ceramic from the National Gallery, and a Matisse from your textbook. I think this might be the same model. Look at that hat, right? Now, granted, these big, poofy, flowery hats were not uncommon at the time, but something makes me think that maybe they're painting the same person, and maybe even in the same session. And you can see that with each of them. And this, I think, also points out what's Matisse about Matisse. Both of them are really interested in just the paint as color on the surface. And that while Matisse tends to avoid black, that doesn't mean they always do, every one of them, all the time. But you can see no matter what, the juxtapositions of color are jarring to the point where you pay attention to them as color rather than as description. I love the blue around the lips of the Vlaminck woman. If you look closely at her lips, it's just this little, no one can paint lips in blue first. And even her teeth, right, they can barely see, are green, acid green in there, you know. Or look at the side of the face on your right of Matisse's woman with that beautiful piece of acid green that's been brought back into there to offset the yellows on her face. And then if you look at her face, there is not a single spot on her face where she's actually flesh colored, you know, on the Matisse on your right. But her face is this series of, wouldn't that be a great Halloween costume? Right? You could just get out and put some makeup and I'm going to go as a Matisse woman, right? And you could just paint your face and that'd be so cool. I got to find a portrait, man, and next time if I ever find a Halloween party. It's not that I did something wrong. But wouldn't that be a really cool outfit to do? You should go out and buy some cheap makeup. I think do that. I think suit and they could buy a cheap white shirt and paint it up and just go as Matisse. Steal my idea. Maybe we'll have a fine art Halloween party in the fall. Wouldn't that be great? Right? A thematic party. Well, so this is really just what Fauvism is all about. I may sound like I'm almost done, but one of the things that Fauvism brings to the forefront is the person of Matisse. Henri Matisse is as important an artist in the 20th century as anybody. And has an incredibly long career all the way to the early 50s, right? And we're going to see him again and again. We're not going to be done with him by any means, right? But this is the first time we get to see him. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Matisse in particular, apart from being a Fauve, right? You can see quite clearly how he fits within this Fauve movement. And it's important to reiterate here that he was the mentor. He was since he was a decade or so older than the others, he really played the role like Pissarro did with the Impressionists, right? He was the older mentor, the figure who had reached the level of artistic maturity where he'd say, "This is what it's all about. You need to do this. You need to push it here." Right? Yeah, he was able to play that role. And we'll see that his route to Fauvism is one that's really quite fascinating. I'll do something online with that, and I'll do a little bit here as well. Okay, there's where I'm going to go. 1905, the year that the Fauve exhibit, right, the year that the Fauves were named the Fauves, was a big year for Matisse. He rolled out Fauvism in the fall. It was named in the autumn salon. But it actually begun to introduce some of the elements of Fauvism already in the spring, in a separate show. There was a different independent art gallery, independent from the salon, showing modern art every spring as well. And it was aptly named the Salon des Indépendants, right, the Independent Salon. And they held a show every spring. And this dated back about 20 years by this point, all the way to the 1880s. Right? So it's immediately out of the wake of the Impressionists. And Matisse shows there even before being labeled as photos. And this painting on your left is the work that he shows there. And it's about 4 feet across. It's pretty big. Not massive, but big. And some of the other artists who show in the fall were also part of this springtime show, too. So it's a big year, right? They get labeled as photos in the fall. But they roll out their ideas, they begin to roll out their ideas in the spring, which seems to have not gotten the same sort of reaction. Right? And at that point, what Matisse had been doing was working again in the south of France. But in this case, he's working with a post-impressionist artist, a guy named Paul Signac, who works very, very similar to the style of Georges Seurat, who you know from the Park. Indeed, pointillism, exactly right. The pointillist style. In fact, that's kind of, Matisse experiments with that for a couple of years. Now, we call it pointillism. Signac called it divisionism, where the entire painting is made up of independent dots of color. I think lower left corner, you can see this pretty clearly. It's like the slide has been pixelated in a way, right? The kind of noise you get from a digital photograph at night, right? Is what it kind of looks like, but that's not what it is. It's these individual points of color. And Matisse has taken that idea up, and it's given him these little bricks that we saw Duran using, right? But much larger. Yeah. And here, Matisse's colors are bright and saturated, as were Signac's, as were Georges Seurat, right? Did very much the same thing. But they're larger because he said he didn't like the way that when you got away from a pointillist picture, you couldn't see the brushstrokes anymore. So at a certain point, it ends up looking almost like a mosaic, doesn't it? Look at the hills in the background in particular with Matisse. It really does look like mosaic work or stained glass. And that's a kind of fascinating thing because in 1905, Matisse went on a trip. Okay. I'll check my date. He's really interested in Islamic art, Matisse is. He starts to collect it. He makes numerous travels. In 1910, he stops in Munich, where there's this massive show, 3,500 or more Islamic works of art. They called it Muhammad. Tapestries, almost 1,000 tapestries, tile work. Right, set up in this ethnographic museum. And there's an ethnographic museum in Paris that existed as well. And I think this idea of the work being a mosaic has some root in that. And it's interesting in the brightness and the pureness of color. Have you ever seen Iznik tile work? It's incredible. The color is just super saturated and contrasting, exactly. But not in a pleasant way that makes both of the colors seem brighter. I think Matisse is all over that already. Right? Plus, the roots of breaking down the color to these constituent pure colors and placing them next to each other to see what happens is, in fact, something they learned from Signac. They were working with Saint-Tropez, nice, major resort town on the French Riviera. And so we're now looking at the Mediterranean. Things, again, don't have to make any sense. Those UFOs in the sky, right? The clouds rendered as if they're spaceships. That's not the point that they make any sense. Right? But this is what he shows when he's coming back. And he gives us this scene of these figures enjoying a bath, I guess, right? And you're the interloper. Okay, ladies, everybody but Demetrius, we're the interlopers, right? They've caught this all-woman lunch where they're so unaware of male presence that they're not even dressed, right? It's a safe zone for them, except Matisse is there, right? Certainly it's not something that he happened upon. It's breaking some of the impressionist rules, and that he's not just setting up a canvas to do this. Besides that, it's 4 feet across, right? So it's a fairly healthy canvas to be sitting up. He's constructing this, and he sees those figures as having some sort of subject, some sort of content, some sort of meaning with those figures that we'll see play out in some of the other ones. But what they're doing, of course, is they've been down at the beach, they're swimming, the woman is wringing out her hair, another one is putting it up, and they're having a little lunch There's one figure that's closed over here on the left, another one standing directly behind. But the majority of the young women are unconcerned. They've gotten back to nature, haven't they? It's almost as if they're communing with the environment. And maybe that's kind of what Matisse is seeing in this, is this idea that what does the artist do but commune with nature and pull from that something meaningful and lasting, from that engagement, right? From that meal, if you will, as you get closer to something more primal. Well, this idea of a series of women naked, relaxing about is a theme that has an incredibly long tradition in art. And we'll see that with Matisse and with the other foes, that this is an important issue, that their relationship to the grand traditions of art. This was in your textbook. Up in Philadelphia, if you get the chance, the Grand Bathers is huge, 10 feet tall or so, right? But it's a theme that Cezanne worked on again and again and again, which is a series of bathers next to a body of water surrounded by trees. Matisse owned a Cezanne. I don't know if you know this, but he's very aware of Cezanne. Everybody's aware of Cezanne because he was taking such chances. This is such a knockout picture when it comes to risk-taking. We talked before about how Cezanne was pulled backward into the foreground, while literary things, set of objects, the background is creeping and looking at this, right? Because of the composition. What happens to this one over here? There's her back, and there's her other shoulder should be over here, but it's brought to the tree, which is painted black. After. And that's kind of the opposite of the way you think about it. He's painting this sky, and he's got over the tree. He's working it both ways, and he brings that right down over the top of the figure. This is kind of space, right? And again and again, there's sort of this similarity between the figure and nature itself. So that the trees end up looking kind of like the back of the room. And large pieces of bare canvas left here. Even larger when you realize that one is larger than that side. Right? It's really a bare piece of painting. And then, again, what we see in the foreground, when this tree trunk supposedly goes behind that one, it seems almost to come in front of it, and it allows it on the opportunity to work with colors around it. And it's not. Well, this idea of using this old metaphor of bathers to use the fjord and looking into the sea of bathers is something that he's aware of. He's picking up on that position. And while he's inspired by Cezanne and has nothing but the greatest respect for Cezanne, he wants to resist it. What's the point? Right? You show the respect, you show the input, right? But you got to do something different with it. And that's exactly what the teacher is doing. He's saying, this is how what I'm doing is different. And one of the best ways to show that off is to take it to traditional meaning. Because that then highlights how your relationship to tradition, how you're doing something utterly different from what was done before. Cezanne did this a number of times. There you can see how big the canvas is. So those people are standing a good 10 feet from it. And there's another version of it right there, which is in the foreground in Philadelphia. So he just kept this thing obsessed in, the idea of bathers, right? And he worked it, and he worked it, and he worked it. We've got a nice little one at the National Gallery, which, who knows what's going on in this? The Battle of Love, the new bather scene. There's 3 pairs wrestling, and then the woman in the left, I don't know. But he did so many of these that it's impossible to say that Matisse is looking at just one of them. But he's very aware of Cezanne's ongoing dialogue with the 4 pairs of wrestlers. If I'm not going to get the right corner. Cezanne's ongoing struggle with this theme, and taking that as his guiding board to move on to something totally different. Yeah. And I think he sees it as something kind of mythical. The idea that it's Mediterranean. On one hand, the Mediterranean is, of course, the birthplace of Western mythology. The Odyssey by Homer, right, is him traveling across the Mediterranean, trying to get home. It's really, something about it is so primal insofar as Matisse understands it. So the Mediterranean scene, he's trying to inject it with something even mythological. And the idea of a male viewer looking at a bunch of naked women at the bath is, in fact, itself mythological. It's very specific. Actaeon was a hunter. And this is one of the saddest mythologies of all time. He's out there hunting deer, right? And as he's chasing a deer through the woods, he just accidentally comes across a pond where Diana, the goddess of the hunt, Artemis, Diana, the goddess of the hunt, is lounging with her entourage, and they're all naked. And you're not supposed to see a goddess naked. You know, we humans don't have that. And even though he wasn't spying on her, he just, oops, sorry, shouldn't be here. And she's so mad at him that she turns him into a deer himself, and his dogs eat him alive. Right? It's one of these myths that makes no sense, because usually the dogs are just and so forth, and this is like, but it was a mistake. Right? So I don't even know if there's a moral to this thing, but the bottom line is what he's done is he's taken this famous picture from Edinburgh. And like I said, Matisse is really aware of the tradition of the art. And he's turned it to the point where you're Actaeon. You're the hunter who stumbled on. But he's not saying it's Diana at the bath or anything like that, right? There's nothing here to say it's that mythology. What he's doing is he's looking through the mythology and trying to find something else that gives it importance. But what he's done, and this is something that what we see is Picasso likes doing this as well, is he'll take a theme that has a viewer in it. And then he removes the viewer so that you become the active agent in the scene. You become part of it, right? It only makes sense because your presence is as important to the image as the image itself is, right? Whereas with fiction, it's kind of self-contained. You know what I mean? The person who's doing the looking is in the picture. But for Matisse, he makes you aware of you doing the looking. You're Actaeon, exactly. You're the one who stumbled upon this. So it doesn't exist in and of itself. It exists for you. Right? The title of the picture, right? Luxe comme et volupté, translates into richness, luxury, right? Luxe. Calm is calm. And volupté, voluptuousness, sensuality, right? Richness, calmness, and sensuality. And it comes from a poem by Baudelaire called Invitation to Voyage, Invitation to Travel. And the exact line of poetry that Matisse lists from the title of this picture is, there is only order and beauty, richness, calm, and sensuality. There's only order and beauty. Right? Richness, calm, and sensuality. And this idea that there is, the thing he implies by giving us this title is the rest of that line of poetry. Right? And you guys want to hit on the head with it. You know, he wants you to think about it when you figure it out. Right? And the other half of that line, there is only order and beauty, is, I think, an important key for Matisse. Everything is about trying to establish order through beauty, through luxuriousness, through calmness, no violence, through sensuality, those colors, right? Sensory appeal. And adding to that, the nudes caught unaware, right? So for him, I think what the theme of this is not just an everyday event, not something that impressionists would paint, maybe something closer to what a symbolist might see in these things. Think about Gauguin, who Matisse collects, right? Paints these Tahitian women bathing, and then he injects into that all of these other interlaced mythological meanings. Eve in the Garden of Eden, okay, right? Before sin, where she noticed she's naked. Okay, we got that too. You know, It's the idea of temptation. It's the idea of original sin. These things enter into it, and that puts Matisse and the folks that much closer to the symbolists in a way. And like them, he's not going to tell you exactly what it means. Okay? But there's more here than just meets the eye. So while they're incredibly decorative, and it's easy to talk about rhythms and color and composition alone, right? The folds are stacked to the teeth with ideas about meaning, about hopefully helping you to understand something more. And what's the point of doing this? I think is to say that, hey, by looking back to a theme that we can stretch through Renaissance pictures, through St. John, back to the Garden of Eden, that maybe there's something here that is important to everybody. You know? That's important to each of us. That's part of who we are as humans. And for me, when I got to that point about thinking about Matisse, I started to like it a lot. When I first thought, a bunch of jargon. And for this, I was like, you know what, there's something here that's deeply humanist. There's something here that's really deeply investigating what does it mean to be a human being. And he's choosing these things really importantly to say, hey, this is something that it doesn't matter if you're born here, or here. That those themes exist. And they exist in the modern world as well. Okay, we've got one more. I don't. I got more Matisse to look at. So if you just pick up Matisse, I'll figure out how we're going to handle our little snow break and what happened then. Fortunately, I hate it. It's supposed to be 60 on Tuesday. Yeah, I know. So we'll probably just get flooding instead. In any event, we'll have plenty of opportunities to pick it up because there's some movements on the list that aren't necessarily all that well represented in DC, which is one of my agenda items. So again, remember that you've got until Thursday the 11th to talk to me about your paper if you haven't done so already. But please make an appointment, right? Because if you wait until the last minute, there's a good chance I may not be able to do it. Okay? See you guys on Tuesday.